Hello everyone, so good to see you. 2024. It was an interesting year, filled with huge titles as early as January and February, lots of remakes, new IPs, and amazing indies. But despite it all, a lot of us are feeling more than ready to move on to the next year for a number of reasons. But before we jump headfirst into 2025, we ought to, of course, give some recognition to the various accomplishments of 2024. If you caught the Good Vibes Awards in 2023, it is pretty much going to be just like that. Except, this time I have recruited the entire GVG crew to give their thoughts on the awards that we're handing out this year. There are a lot of games that we believe deserve some attention, and so with their help, we're going to name off titles with their, let's say, very carefully thought out categories, one by one, starting with
the best game from a publisher that didn't care about it. For an exceptional game that was done dirty by the higher-ups. This award goes to Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Look, if I said to you that a game was made by the same developers as Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends, I expect you not to look any further into it and just pick up a controller and play. So why am I seeing it for £9.99 in the same year that it came out? Well, the answer to that is Ubisoft. They had no faith in this game. It was barely advertised, it was slashed in price immediately, and there is no reason why. This is one of the best games to have released in the last few years. It's one of the best Metroidvanias ever. It gives Metroid Dread a run for its money. It's the best Prince of Persia game. Lost Crown is exceptional in every single way. The world design is phenomenal, the abilities you get are so versatile and fun, and the core combat never gets dull. There's even innovations in here that push the entire genre forward. Like in other Metroidvanias, putting a pin on your map to remember something is pretty commonplace, right? But in The Lost Crown, you can attach a screenshot to that pin and see exactly where you took that screenshot, what that room looked like. So if there's something that maybe requires a power-up that you suspect you'll get later in the game, once you get that power-up, you can look back at that screenshot and return to that exact point. I want that in every Metroidvania. There's also a surprisingly large cast of characters, especially for this genre. It still manages to be isolating, but there's some really intriguing story beats, giving you a lot of motivation to keep pushing forward and see the game through to its end. They did everything they could with Lost Crown, and it's a shame that that talent probably was not rewarded. This game certainly was not rewarded.
The Most Played award is exactly what its name implies, an award given to the game that captured more time than any other. The Most Played award goes to Helldivers 2. Over the course of this year, I put nearly 300 hours into Helldivers 2. That's more than I played my Switch. Helldivers has been a constant for me since its launch in February. Despite the controversies surrounding it, I've remained steadfastly devoted to Super Earth's cause, traveling between bot and bug planets, shooting my way through questionable missions handed down from high command, and so has everyone I've introduced it to. And more players are discovering that now than ever, thanks to the recent update revealing the Illuminates. By the time this year ends, I may very well have sunk another 100 hours into Arrowhead's tongue-in-cheek space fascism simulator. There's nothing like the feeling of squatting up with a group of friends and dropping into a life-or-death situation against an alien menace. Every moment in Helldivers feels like we're narrowly escaping our doom. The tense moments where you land only to find yourself preemptively surrounded by enemies are addictive. I never get tired of seeing a 500-kilogram bomb devastate an enemy camp or seeing a Bile Titan crumple from an orbital strike. Every time I successfully reach the dropship and escape, I'm itching to get to the next mission. Helldivers 2 is one of the best third-person shooters I've ever played, and it deserves both the accolades and derision it's received this year. If you haven't played, I strongly recommend you do, even if you don't think you'll like it. In fact, especially if you don't think you like it. The sheer amount of people I've met who have become hooked on it tells me you might love it the same way I do.
Next up is the Best Sequel to Rivals of Aether award. And the award goes to Rivals of Aether 2. If you haven't played Rivals of Aether, it's an incredible platform fighter modeled after what makes a game like Super Smash Bros. Melee so great. But Rivals of Aether achieves something that I don't think other platform fighters have managed to achieve. And that's a sense of identity. The characters have great designs, with some of my favorites including Ronno, Forsburn, Crag, and the ever-lovable Orkane. Rivals of Aether 2 evolves the game from its 2D sprite art style to a full 3D art style, while also making changes to the gameplay. In Rivals 2, characters now have access to a Smash Bros.-like shield, and you can grab ledges. Those two things might seem small by comparison, but it really does change the gameplay of Rivals of Aether. In my humble opinion, Rivals of Aether 2 simply has the best feeling platform fighter controls next to Smash Bros. That's an incredibly high honor. I'm excited for Rivals of Aether 2 to eventually make its way to console. People need to see this game. They need to play it. There was something so special about the first one, and in my opinion, they've recaptured that here.
The most ambitious newcomer, going to the best new original IP of the year. The award goes to Metaphor ReFantazio. A long time ago, at the end of 2016, a game titled Project ReFantasy was announced, and I was on the lookout for whatever form this game was going to take. And after nearly 8 years, last summer we would see it revealed as Metaphor ReFantazio. Developed by Studio Zero, it takes aspects of the Shin Megami Tensei and Persona games, forming a wholly original world and experience. And oh, power of kings, does it do it well. This third new major pillar for Alice takes place in the fantasy kingdom of Uchronia, in which the king is slain and you must stop the killer Luis from taking the throne. Your own goal as the main character is to help lift a curse from your childhood best friend who happens to be the rightful prince of the kingdom. You're accompanied by your fairy companion Gallica and embark on a globe-trotting adventure, one that constantly changes the set pieces and beautiful visuals as you progress. The gameplay of Metaphor is what really fascinates me. Take the press turn battle system of Shin Megami Tensei, the calendar and social link system of Persona, mix in a unique job system with the archetypes, and you have the formula for an adventure that is brand new, but just familiar enough to the Alice faithful to keep you engaged the whole way through. Part of the reason is the narrative. Metaphor's main theme is that of anxiety. Oh, cool, something we can all relate to. The race to be king is something of an election and popularity contest. You must do everything you can to ensure the populace notices you, with all kinds of twists and turns as you try to outsmart your competition. You meet so many interesting characters, each who have their own goals and motivations. Gallica, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Neurus, just to name a few, all fantastic characters. Heismay in particular might be my favorite new character of the year. I just love this Batman and wholesome dad. He's got like the most powerful voice in the game, which is saying a lot when you have such an incredible English cast like this. One of the most striking may in fact be Luis himself. In most Atlas games, each character has their own personal aspirations and dreams to achieve. In this game, your party's goals are kill Luis, kill Luis, kill Luis, kill Luis. I think you get it. Partly because this is a title where your nemesis is named from the very start. You're not fighting some unknown ideology or get tossed a new big bad in the 11th hour. The development team wanted Luis to be like another main character. He commands a presence when he's on screen, and whenever he shows his face, you know that the story is going to get moving. He is but one of the many reasons why I think Metaphor is the strongest new IP of 2024. The music by Shoji Meguro is phenomenal, and the art style, as I mentioned before, is so striking and dynamic. You'll likely encounter references and mechanical allusions to other Atlas titles while playing it, but make no mistake, this is one of the most original and fresh titles I've played in the last year. It also lets me wear the samurai outfits from SMT4. That means this game had to be good.
The award for Best Grinder Alternative goes to Pepper Grinder. Now, this should be self-explanatory, but just in case it isn't, I'll elaborate. The reason this award exists is because why spend your time on a dating app where if you know someone who's playing and enjoying this incredibly cool game, they obviously have great taste and you've already met someone worth dating. But no, seriously, I just wanted to have a bit of fun with this. I wanted to highlight one of my favorite indie games from the year, and this certainly was one of those. This drill-based platformer comes from Oregon-based developer REC and was published by Devolver Digital. And usually when Devolver publishes something, I pay attention because they publish so many cool indie games, and Pepper Grinder is no exception. As I said, it is a drill-based platformer. It's got echoes of Dig Dug plus some movement. I would say that is inspired by Echo the Dolphin almost, which is a wild thing to say, I realize, but it is very fluid in that sense. And basically, You play as this character who her named Pepper, and she has a drill named Grinder, and you guide her through all these different platforming stages with her drill. And it's a momentum-based gameplay style where you're drilling through different kinds of dirt, and as you get further in the game, new kinds of dirt and such are, and like lava and ice and water and stuff are introduced to kind of mess with the gameplay mechanics, and then are layered upon each other to make things even trickier as you get further and further into the game. There are some great boss fights throughout. It is let down a little bit by a kind of a frustratingly designed final boss at the very end, which does bring down the experience a little bit. But as you know, as we say, it's about the journey and not the destination, and getting to that final boss, everything on the way is just... It's clean. It's clean. This game is such a vibe. If you've ever played the Pixel Junk Shooter series, the music is very reminiscent of that, very lo-fi, very chill. This game is just a game that wants you to just chill back and have a good time. And it's like 5 to 6 hours long, maybe slightly longer if you're going to go for 100%. It's really bite-sized, it's really cozy and chill, and does not require a ton of your time to get through. And it just stands out as one of the best indie experiences I had this year.
Best love letter for the game that celebrated another game and made you happy that both exist. I've heard about Vampire Survivors for a long time now, but I never really bothered paying attention. I knew there was some sort of Castlevania pastiche, but it was also more of a shooter, and that's just not really my thing. I don't really go for the bullet hells, because I tend to be bad at them. But leave it to the Ode to Castlevania DLC to really make me pay attention, and this is without a doubt the greatest love letter to Castlevania I think I've ever seen. Castlevania has crossed over with quite a few things over the years, and there's always a lot of love behind it. People really do appreciate the series. But nobody really goes as deep as Ode to Castlevania, because you have pretty much every major protagonist from throughout the series represented when you first started up, and a brand new Castlevania level that plays completely differently from anything in the base game of Vampire Survivors. It's kind of amazing how well they translated the side-scrolling experience of playing a Castlevania to a top-down perspective, yet have everything still be recognizable as different areas of Castlevania, and to highlight all the various bosses that you can fight and the weapons that the characters use, and finding different ways of making each whip feel different and unique, and still bring in those elements, especially when Vampire Survivors already had a lot of items that were heavily based on stuff from Castlevania. How do you expand from there? And yet they found a way. But that nostalgia alone wouldn't have made it stand out. Again, I've seen that sort of love letter before, and I enjoy it every time, but the thing that got me is when I finally unlocked Richter and took on a brand new boss that's only available when you fight as him. And I don't want to spoil anything, but this makes the game so much more. So much bigger, so much more expansive, so much more involved than you would ever think before, with some genuinely funny scenes and some awesome fan service. When this game says it's an ode to Castlevania, it means it. Every little detail from Castlevania history is represented here. Maybe a few things here and there don't quite get the representation you'd hope for, but on the whole, it is 95% there as just an all-encompassing celebration of Castlevania. And as a longtime Castlevania fan, oh, I love it so much. It truly is a love letter to this series.
The best follow-up to Action 52. For one game that contains far too many games, this award goes to UFO 50. I'm sure that most of us at some point in our lives have had a cheap knockoff console, one of those small little boxes that contain 50 games, whether they're official or unofficial, and usually those unofficial games are either knockoffs or just god dreadful. But in comes UFO 50 from the developers of Spelunky, and I strongly believe that many individual games from UFO 50 could qualify for Game of the Year. They are that good, and there's 50 of them. The best part of this compilation is the vast majority of games aren't just trying to repeat what you've seen and done before. Instead, they are legitimately innovative. For example, there's a platformer where you've got a bunch of lives, and at any moment you can dispose of one of these lives to help the next one. Either you can explode, or turn to stone, or shoot off in the distance and become a platform. And so it becomes working together with your past self to overcome obstacles and make new paths. I haven't seen this stuff in a platformer before. And then we check out another game and it's an open world golf game. Either it's really innovative stuff, cool ideas you haven't seen before, or just tremendous games like this puzzle game here. It doesn't exactly reinvent the genre, you just walk around and pick up pink blobs and put them in these little stars here while avoiding the blue blobs, but it's so addictive and so much fun. Or this screen clearing game where you can't defeat enemies without a football, so you've got to go and find it and then ricochet it off the walls. It is just full of so many high quality games. And so I could say like this one is Game of the Year, or this one is Game of the Year, but it's one package, and UFO 50 is absolutely one of the best games of 2024.
The Dream Come True Award is reserved for games we never thought would happen. Games that publishers all but abandoned and revived from the brink of death. The Dream Come True Award goes to Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics. The 32-bit era was the halcyon age of fighting games. They were at their peak, and Capcom was undisputedly the leader of the pack. As Street Fighter's shine began to fade, Capcom reinvigorated the franchise with the introduction of Marvel characters in X-Men vs. Street Fighter, beginning the era of Capcom's crossover titles that are even more beloved today as they were when they were new. For nearly 20 years, most of the Marvel crossover games were lost to time, trapped on the consoles of their day. When Capcom announced they were bringing back Marvel vs. Capcom 2 alongside all of the games that preceded it, I was over the moon. I never thought these games would get re-released, and certainly not as a collection. The Punisher, Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Street Fighter, and MVC 1 and 2. These are each legendary games worthy of a solo re-release, and Capcom could have gotten away with charging a fortune for these altogether, but we got them in a collection. This truly is the best timeline. For fighting game fans new and old, MVC Collection is the kind of thing we had collectively hoped for, but never thought we'd see. This is the kind of game that deserves a place on every player's shelf. You never know when it will disappear from digital shops again.
Next up, the best revival of a 17-year-long dormant series, which is an award that goes to the best revival of a 17-year-long dormant series, and that award goes to Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I love the Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi series, and I love Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball fans have been blessed with a lot of great video games over the years, and few have hit the highs of the Budokai Tenkaichi series. It's a 3D arena fighter that kind of redefined that genre. And while arena fighters are dime a dozen today, none of them have ever quite stood up to what Tenkaichi was. Until now. Sparking Zero is the fourth entry in the Budokai Tenkaichi series, and I couldn't be happier that it's here. There's been so much more Dragon Ball since the series went dormant, and now all of that new Dragon Ball goodness is available here in Sparking Zero. At its core, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is a playground where you can take your favorite characters and pit them up against each other in epic clashes worthy of the Dragon Ball name. Sparking Zero is less about the competition of a fighting game and more about the experience of being in Dragon Ball. The game is horribly unbalanced, but that's to its credit. That's what it wants to be. When you play as Krillin, you're going to be as strong as Krillin. If you're fighting Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta, well, the odds are stacked against you. That doesn't mean characters like Yajirobe can't be in S-tier rankings because of some of his abilities. Sparking Zero gives you the tools of the characters you play as, and lets you do whatever you want with them. And I haven't even mentioned the scenario builder, which allows you to create your own what-if battles in the world of Dragon Ball and share them online. They're really customizable, from battle conditions to animations to what happens during the battle itself. It's all super cool. And as a lifelong Dragon Ball fan, I couldn't be happier.
I am still playing this award, going to the game that was actually released in 2023, but some of us are still playing in 2024. And you know what? I'm not even gonna lie, I just want to talk about F-Zero 99. This game released to the masses, and to our disbelief, quite frankly, as the most recent in the 99 series of games available for NSO users. And I mean, look at it! An F-Zero game finally released, and it wasn't even a port or a remake. In the main 99 races, you must battle it out and drive aggressively to keep your spot as high up on top of the pack in a 4-lap race around familiar tracks modified for a very unique experience. And even as somebody who's over rank 80 at this point, that can be a struggle. It's never easy, especially now, considering that you're competing against people who can do these races in their sleep. Even today, I'm still greatly amused by the sheer mass of racers bumping into each other. The game maintains an ingenious balance no matter what place you're in. As is tradition, you gain a regular boost that expends energy each time you use it. If you're lagging behind, you can quickly gain sparks and build a meter that will eventually activate a super boost and take it to the sky rail. Clever use of this alternate track can greatly assist you in passing large crowds or difficult hairpin turns. But if you're higher up in front, you'll come across bumpers that will slow your progress or just explode in your face. And since there's much less opponents to bump into, chances are you're not getting enough sparks to activate a super boost in 10th place, for example. The balance of this game is so fascinating, and races are a short 4 laps, which makes it very easy to pick up and say, maybe one more game? I cannot believe how much F-Zero I played this year, and games like F-Zero Climax released this year too, which gave me an even bigger appreciation for 99, because that was technically the last F-Zero game to be released from then until now. A Game Boy Advance game! Sometimes I can't believe this game even exists at all. Nintendo has stated that they weren't going to do any more major updates for the game, but then they turned around in the summer and gave us an entire event called the Festival Queen League, and it made tracks in that league have a cool nighttime theme to it. Team battles were updated so that instead of 2 teams this time, there were 5 total teams racing to score the highest points amongst each other. This was a very welcome update, as the previous iteration was starting to feel a little bit stale. And somehow, the biggest update was yet to come on the anniversary of F-Zero 99, which added new events, extra emotes, racer skins, including tracks from F-Zero Grand Prix. They took the tracks from the Satellaview, implemented them to a wider track to complement the 99 format, and made it so that you can unlock the exclusive machines that you race as in that game. This game has transformed more and more into a celebration of the series, and I'm still here for it. Not sure how much I'll be playing this game in 2025, but I'll always be down to jump into a game if time permits. Let's just hope that this has paved the way for more titles in the future.
The Everything is Fine, Really award for the best game where nothing bad or scary happens at all goes to the 2024 remake of Silent Hill 2. Now man, for horror fans like myself, this has been a long time coming. Silent Hill is one of my favorite horror franchises of all time, and it has been a long time since we've had an amazing Silent Hill game that is absolutely worth playing. There was the free release, Silent Hill: The Short Message, earlier this year, which was fine, but this from-the-ground-up remake of Silent Hill 2, one of the series' most storied entries, delivers in every single way that I wanted it to. And you know, I have a track record of admitting when I'm wrong. I believe I'm pretty good about that, so I think it's only fair to admit when I'm right as well. And I gotta say, as previews came in for this throughout the year, I was like, you know what? I know Bloober Team, the developer behind this remake, doesn't have the best pedigree, the best track record, but it feels like they're cooking here. Just give them a chance. And you know what? Turns out I was right. Bloober Team really nailed this remake. Now, it must be said they did have some assistance and oversight from Konami and some of the original Silent Hill 2 development team members like Akira Yamaoka, the legendary series composer. So it isn't just Bloober Team, but they did do the bulk of the work, and they nailed it from the atmosphere and the monster designs, the sound design, the characters and their voice acting and their mocap. Everything just lands the way it should in a faithful Silent Hill 2 remake. And I want to give special shout outs to the audio design, because that's one of the most important parts of any Silent Hill game. And what I mean by that is that, you know, you'll be just exploring all these dark hallways and dilapidated buildings and the, you know, horrifically messed up town of Silent Hill. And sometimes you'll hear things that are meant to unsettle you and kind of get you on your back foot and crawl under your skin, but there isn't actually anything out there that's making that sound that's going to get you or attack you. It's just happening to make you freaked out. And they nailed that aspect of the audio design in Silent Hill 2. And of course, I don't want to go into spoilers, but the monster designs in particular are very important to the main character, James Sunderland's psyche, and what he's going through in his head and what the town of Silent Hill is projecting onto him. And in terms of that stuff, without getting into spoiler territory, they nailed the monster designs as well. So, I think most fans of Silent Hill 2 will tell you that Bloober Team had an incredibly uphill battle getting this one right and getting the tone right and the atmosphere right. And personally, this hardcore Silent Hill fan thinks they nailed it, and they did so well. I don't know whether I'd want to see a new game from them next, like an original game, like an original Silent Hill game, or remakes of Silent Hill 1 and 3. It's really hard because I fully trust this series in their hands now, and I feel like Konami probably does too, and they should, because Silent Hill 2 is one of, if not the best horror game of the year.
The Catchup Award for the game that makes it worth being content current. 2024 was a big year for me in terms of Final Fantasy XIV because I knew that Dawn Trail was on its way. It's the latest expansion, it's the beginning of a brand new arc for Final Fantasy XIV, and it was my best chance to start fresh and actually be able to play with all my friends who do play Final Fantasy XIV on a much more regular basis, and to experience an expansion in real time with everyone. And that was something that was really special to me. And I managed to pull it off. I had to play a lot. I streamed all of Shadowbringers and Endwalker in order to experience that, but that was a fantastic end to the previous arc. To see it play from the beginning to end, in the course of me starting this MMO to catching up with it, was a great experience. But a part of me always wanted to see something fresh, to see what it was like to come into a new expansion and not have everything be mostly opened up or conquered or figured out. And that was the best part of Dawn Trail for me, to see with fresh eyes that, oh, there's extra currencies when it's fresh that you have to sort of grind for to get through. And that's how people figure out the bosses and learn their patterns and get this new equipment. And, oh, this stuff that is just part of the expansion is not available yet because that came in later updates, like Society quests and the like. And just see how it sort of evolved as time went on. And Dawn Trail itself is a lot of fun. I know it's not the big new popular one. It's going to be hard to beat something like Shadowbringers or Endwalker, but I still think it's quite good, and personally, I think it's my third favorite expansion. There's a wonderful character arc here in the first half where you see this character grow and evolve, and then to see that pay off in the second half and how those convictions that they learned actually apply to them dealing with the real world with an actual threat. And there's a lot of love put towards Final Fantasy IX, which is one of my favorite Final Fantasies. And, you have all the stuff that you'd expect from Final Fantasy XIV at this point, and it's all done well. There's definitely set up here for this new arc. It's not clear exactly what the overarching plot's going to be, but there's enough set up that you can sort of put the pieces together, and of course that's going to come out as time goes along. But yeah, Dawn Trail. It's so great to catch up to this, so great to play with it fresh. Really stands out as a highlight of my gaming in 2024.
The jolliest horrific game. For a generally light-hearted game that will also traumatize you. This award goes to Emio the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. I thought that we would never really go beyond Famicom Detective Club being remade. Like, that is niche enough. But then they made an entirely new game with Emio. And Emio is one of the best stories I've ever really experienced. In books, in film, in games. And a key part of that is the build-up. This game takes its time. It can be quite slow even. There's huge chunks where you're just sitting down and talking to someone. Nothing dramatic is happening. You're just forming bonds and guessing where the story could be leading from this. And while that may seem a bit mundane, all of these pieces come together in the end to form one of the best culminations I have ever seen. There were times where Emio made me the Smiling Man, but when all was said and done, I was certainly not John the Smiling Man. I was John the staring into a wall and pondering life man. It's a really beautiful game, and while I can see some comments debating whether this is actually a game, I don't think Emio would be as effective in any other medium. There's no room for other choices or other paths, really, but I still think your input is really effective here. What more is there to say than play Emio? Otherwise, I'll have to blow you over like the big bad wolf.
Video games are an incredible medium. They make you feel things in a way that films, TV, or other media can't. For all of us, there was that first game. Maybe not the first you played, but the first game that made you a fan of games. A game that defines why you play. This year, the Why I Play award goes to Astrobot. At my core, I play games because they make me happy. They evoke a sense of wonder, excitement, and joy that few things can. Astrobot is a distillation of those senses from start to finish. Every moment with Team Asobi's masterpiece made me smile, from the way Astro breaks the fourth wall to acknowledge the player, to the set-piece fights against bosses. I can't find any faults with Astro's third outing. Astrobot celebrates games in the same way Smash Bros. Is often lauded for doing, reminding the player throughout the adventure of all the characters they've met throughout their own time with the medium, culminating in one of the most powerful nostalgic sequences I've experienced in the decades I've spent as a gamer. So many games today focus on amazing things I love about the medium: incredible storytelling, tight mechanics, breathtaking visuals. Few of those were possible when I first picked up a controller. Instead, Astrobot focuses on one thing: fun. And you know what? I'm more than okay with that.
Next up is the Deepest Well Award, an award that celebrates games that go deeper and deeper than you could ever imagine. And the award goes to Animal Well. Animal Well is such a hard game to talk about. How much can I say about Animal Well without giving away its best parts? To start, Animal Well is a Metroidvania, but it doesn't focus on combat, it doubles down on the puzzle solving. Animal Well takes place underground, where you'll play as a little guy trying to make his way out. Along the way, you'll find various items, such as the Bubble Wand, which allows you to blow bubbles to use as extra platforms, or the yo-yo, which you can use to hit switches that are too far away. One of the things I love about Animal Well is how simple the items themselves are. They're just regular, everyday, mundane objects, but the ways in which you use them are so creative. And again, it's one of those things where I don't want to give away how some of these items work, because that's part of the puzzle. The game explains very little, and that's to its credit. Everything you do in Animal Well is a puzzle waiting to be solved. Even if you don't think you're good at puzzle games, I highly advise you to give Animal Well a try. When I played Animal Well earlier this year, it was the only thing I could think about when I was playing it and when I wasn't. Very few games have had that honor. I've never played a game like Animal Well before, and I never will again, and that's a beautiful thing.
The Best Preserved Award, given to the game that was remade and came back in 2024. At least for me, this goes to Persona 3 Reload. I know, yet another Atlus game from me, but I wanted to personally congratulate Atlus for remembering that, oh yeah, there are other games besides Persona 5. In all seriousness, Persona 3 was in a strange place, originating on the PS2 and having various releases like Persona 3 Fest and Persona 3 Portable, each with different content, options, pros, and cons. But for as much as it hurts me to not have the female protagonist Kotone in this version, I do have to admit that especially with the release of episode Aegis, this is the definitive way to play Persona 3. At its core, this is the same story told from the 2006 original. You move into a dorm where some crazy supernatural events involving monsters called shadows starts occurring around your crew, and after acquiring the power to fight these shadows called Persona, you're wrapped up in a quest to eliminate the source, believed to be in the extra hour that occurs at midnight, the Dark Hour. Part of this task involves exploring the menacing tower that only appears within this hour called Tartarus. The core fighting, which happens here, involves climbing dozens upon dozens of randomly generated floors. To many of us, this was quite the chore, and this was easily the biggest hurdle that I think this remake had to overcome to capture people's attention for how little variety it offered before. But it's quite different now. Atlus has taken many of the lessons learned with the titles that came before it and really added so much. More visually interesting environments, challenge floors with high risk, high rewards, a revamped shuffle time which can provide major arcana cards for buffs, which kind of gives it a bit of a roguelike feel. There's plenty of changes that, as a whole, give it a completely refreshed feel. When you're not fighting shadows, you're living your best life as a student, strengthening your bonds with friends, wandering around at night, raising your social stats, and experiencing all the new hangouts that further flesh out your party members. One of my other biggest gripes with Persona 3 is, since you're waiting for each calendar full moon to progress the story in a major way, there was always just so many days in which it felt like you weren't accomplishing much in between. Reload has packed the game with little events and things to do, making the wait to each full moon much more engaging. It might essentially be padding, but it's expertly fluffed padding that feels integral to the rest of the story. Literally everything was redone, from character art, incredible menu UI, models, textures, down to almost every single character getting a new voice actor, or being given a voice for the first time. There's also remixed music as well as new tracks that fit right into the rest of this timeless soundtrack. Every aspect was fantastically done and preserved, each helping to bring life to the very first Persona game that I ever played. Persona 3 Reload is such an ambitious remake from the ground up. Sometimes I forget it's a PS2 game, and I'm more than happy to see it preserved and accessible for so many people. Now, can we finally get moving even further back from here and start preserving Persona 2 next? Yeah? How about it, Atlus? Huh? Atlus? You know what I'm saying?
And now, the Growing Up in the 90s Ruled Award for the best game that overloads your brain with nostalgia-fueled dopamine goes to... what else? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, Growing Up in the 90s did rule, and FF7 is only one of many, many reasons why. There are so many incredible things I could say about this game. Personally speaking, it is right up there as my top game of the year, right alongside Astrobot. It's really hard to choose between the two. But for this award specifically, I want to focus on just how incredibly respectful and reverential Rebirth is to the original game and its millions upon millions of fans, of which I am one. I mean, speaking as someone who grew up exploring every pixelated inch of this world, getting to explore this same world again in 2024, but to scale, was an unbelievable experience and one that I wish I could have for the first time again. I know there have been some complaints about the checklist-style open-world format where you're going and activating towers and having new icons pop up in the map around them and, just going to each one. But personally speaking, all that stuff just provided me an excuse to explore the world I already wanted to explore. I was already going to chart every single inch of every map in this game just because of my love for the world of Final Fantasy VII and my desire to see how they reinterpreted it and how they recreated it in a modern format for Rebirth. And personally speaking, I think they absolutely nailed it. And that's not even getting into the incredible battle system that is in all ways better from Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it already had a strong start there. The unbelievable soundtrack. This is easily one of the best soundtracks of the year, especially if you're a fan of the original FF7. The way they reinterpret classic themes in ways you'd never expect. It's just consistently delightful and surprising. The story diverts in some interesting ways. I know there are some out there who would prefer the remake series to be a straight one-to-one remake of the original. Personally, I'm not one of them. I think the story deviations have been really interesting, and Rebirth continues that trend. But really, to me, it just comes back to the exploration and the presentation of this storied world. And, they really strike a nice balance between recreating the world you remember, but also expanding on various regions of the world map in really creative ways that kind of add to what you remember from the original and make the game world a bit more dynamic and a lot more vertical. There's so much verticality to the exploration in this game. And then, of course, there's the incredible reference for the characters, the main cast of characters. They're all presented so superbly, and that was true in Remake as well. But then we've got, kind of an expanded lineup here with characters like Red 13 and Sid and such. And Vincent. So really, if you're a fan of the original FF7, maybe I can't speak for every fan out there, but at least for this fan, Rebirth hit every note and then some. It's not perfect, but what game is? But it certainly came pretty damn close to me out of all the games that came out in 2024 this year. Like I said, It's really between this and Astrobot for me is my personal favorite game of the year. But in terms of games that absolutely respect and revere their source material and the fans who grew up with that material, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth absolutely embodies this award.
Best Throwback, for the game that only needs a facelift to be every bit as fun as the original. One of the things I wanted to do in 2024 was release a video before Dragon Quest III HD 2D came out in order to show what the NES version was like and, have that tie-in. And unfortunately, due to time constraints in life, I wasn't able to make it happen. But I was able to play some Dragon Quest III on the NES for quite a bit before that didn't happen. And I can tell you that it's amazing to see how much of the DNA of that NES game is still in Dragon Quest III HD 2D. It is obviously better. The visuals are absolutely a standout, but the story is still remarkably similar. The places you go is remarkably similar. The core concepts of the combat is pretty much the same. It's expanded because you can actually customize what your characters look like, and there's more job classes available, but the basics are there. The skeleton of Dragon Quest III is what feeds Dragon Quest III HD 2D. This is not a complete revamp. This is just modernizing it to make it play better for more modern players. People who want to know exactly where to go so they don't have to wander around and get into random battles. People who want to have a more modern visual style or just enjoy the HD 2D aesthetic. It is a marvel to see this game just expanded upon, because I remember going into the towers and the caves and it being very much a slightly better looking version of what I had in Dragon Quest 1 and 2. But to see it just evolve into actual cave systems while still maintaining the general layout of these places is mind-blowing. It really is just a straight up update to the NES game, to the point where, yeah, we're just playing an NES game here. Yeah, it's better, but it's also the concept of, if we played an NES game with modern conveniences today, that's just Dragon Quest III HD 2D. You take away that coat of paint and it still works under the hood. And that is the impressive part about Dragon Quest III HD 2D. I cannot wait to see them do the same thing with Dragon Quest 1 and 2. I hope they continue it to 4 and 5 and 6, because God, those games need more love. But I am so happy to see people paying attention to this game, because it is so important. Playing this game makes you realize why Japan fell in love with it when it came out originally, and how this game is what made Dragon Quest the true juggernaut in Japan that it is. And just to continually push the Dragon Quest fandom further, to just expand it more and more, I can only applaud that. And the fact that we're doing it through an NES game, amazing, truly amazing. And a highlight of the year for sure. So thank you to those who played it. And if you haven't played it yet, please try it. Trust me, it is well worth your time.
Wow, a lot of great choices by the crew. Even though in some aspects it might not be considered the most exciting year to some, there was definitely still a constant stream of games being released, sometimes weekly. And although we might not be able to play every game individually, we can always rely on each other to play something that the others have not, which is mostly why I wanted to get the whole crew together for this. Maybe we talked about a game that you're willing to give a shot now in 2025. If so, let us know in the comments, or tell us about a game that you really enjoyed this year. If it's not on our list, we would love to know. But that's it for me, and that brings the year 2024 to a close with a whole new year of unexpected announcements awaiting us. Thank you so much for your support, for just being here with us, whether you're tuning into a podcast, whether you're watching a stream that I do on Twitch, or just even tuning into some of our videos. Every little bit of support matters. So please look forward to what's to come. It's going to be a big year. All right, everybody, take care of yourselves. Till we meet in 2025.